you would, please. Great. Good evening and welcome to the Hopkinton Select Board meeting for Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. All members will be in the meeting room, participating in the meeting, and will be present. The public has an option of attending in person here at Town Hall or via Zoom using the link posted in this meeting's agenda. Right on cue, all members are here. This meeting is being recorded. The first order of business this evening is to go into an executive session for some specific items. I'll go ahead and read that motion. And then if I could get a second, or I'll entertain this motion, and then we'll take a second. So I will entertain a motion to move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, collective bargaining, to consider a grievance filed by the police union on behalf of its membership because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the board. Also pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, to consider strategy with respect to litigation, Hopkinton CP LLC versus the Town of Hopkinton, Middlesex Superior Court, number 2381 CV 01066, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. Also pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, to consider strategy with respect to litigation, the Hopkinton LNG Corporation doing business as Eversource Energy versus the Board of Assessors of the Town of Hopkinton, Appellate Tax Board docket number 332213, 332214, 5081 rather. FY 2017, docket number 334817, 334818, 335082, FY 2018, docket number 337604, 337605, 337606, FY 2019, docket number 339833, 339835, FY 2020, docket number 342571, 342567, FY 2021, docket number 345131, 345134, 345137, FY 2022, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. Also pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to consider strategy for negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager, to allow Elaine Lazarus, sorry, I'm reading so fast here I can't even speak. To allow Elaine Lazarus, Greg DeBoer, Cody Normandin, Matt Santoro, Joe Bennett, Scott Van Ralton, Nicholas Anastopoulos, Byron Birchman, and John Neese to participate in executive session and to reconvene in open session at the conclusion of executive session.
So moved.
We have a motion by the Vice Chair and a second by Mr. Clark. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify with a roll call vote. Mr. Manning.
Edelman, yes.
Mary Jo Lafreniere, yes.
Brian Herr, yes.
Joe Clark, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead into executive session, and we plan to be out by 7 p.m. We have a lot to do this evening, so we're really going to have to try to stick to a timeline here. We'll do that. Continue on with our meeting. We are in executive session there for a little bit. So we'll come back and restart the public session with the first or the next item being the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so item 1, executive session concluded. Next up, we have,
Begin before 7?
sorry?
Can we begin before 7? Even though it's, yes.
Yeah.
We can, okay.
Next up, good question, thanks. Next up, public forum. Residents are invited to share ideas, opinions, or ask questions regarding town government. We'd like to enforce a 2-minute rule if at all possible, please. If you run over a little bit, that's okay, but we can't have a 10-minute speech. If anybody would like to join us, please do so right now. Come on up. I almost said seeing none. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you guys?
Well, how are you?
Thank you.
Welcome.
So I'm Amy Beck, the Director of Senior Services, and with me is Jessica McNult, the Assistant Director. And we are really very excited to share with you that the Hopkinton's Senior Services Needs Assessment is complete. And we will be presenting that with Susan Berger of UMass Boston on Wednesday, September 18th at 5 p.m. at the Senior Center. More than a year ago, we started the process to identify the current and long-term needs of residents aged 55 and older in not Massachusetts, in Hopkinton. This process included focus group surveys, stakeholder interviews, and some of you may have even taken part in this.
So the full report will hopefully be available online shortly. We will also have reports available to distribute to stakeholders and community members. Our hope is that folks will have an opportunity to read the report and are as excited as we are to engage with the community around seniors' needs. We've already learned a lot from the report, and we are excited to share that with everybody. It has provided us with ideas of how to improve and expand a lot of our programs and services, and ultimately how to improve the lives of seniors across town. So we're very grateful to all of those who took the time and effort to participate in our focus groups, and those who contributed thoughtfully to the surveys and in the individual interviews. And we look forward to utilizing these findings ultimately to help us lay the foundation for our strategic plan, which is the next step in our process. So we, again, want to invite all the members of the community, members of the Select Board to join us Wednesday, September 18th at 5 p.m. at the Senior Center to hear the results of this finding. For those unable to attend, the meeting will be recorded for HCAM for you to enjoy later at a later date. So we just wanted to come and educate everybody about that.
Great, thank you very much. That sounds like some really good information coming our way. Thank you.
I think there is. And it's great as we go forward also looking at becoming more age and dementia friendly across the board in the community. So we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else for public forum, please?
Oh, me.
Mrs. Lafreniere. Ms. Lafreniere.
I was asked, and I went downstairs, and Amy and I voted on our way in tonight, and early voting is available, and it is up and running, and anyone can come in, and it's all this week, and I think part of next week. Please, if you want to take advantage of it, just give the town clerk's office a call to check on the hours and come in and vote.
Election day is next Tuesday.
Yep, the 3rd.
Anything else? Anyone else? Public forum. Seeing no others, we'll move on. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Brian, I'm not letting you know that easy.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I know. Steve Snow, 78 Pine Island Road. All right, so January 30th, 2024, I filed a police criminal complaint against Ms. Rittenbush and Chief Bennett. I've asked the Select Board on numerous occasions to look into it. I've been told they would. Other than Shahadul, he told me he wouldn't be involved. that it was Mariel's problem. Nothing's been done. So on the 20th of June, I sent the FOIA to the town of Hopkinton, town clerk, and I also sent the same FOIA to the Northwest District DA's office. I received the DA's office, never was asked for money. I got an email from town council, I got an email from the town clerk's office looking for me to pay for the services after the 10-day limit where you owe it to me no matter what. So that's still unanswered. The FOIA is still sitting down there on Connor's desk. I don't know if they're done with it. I don't know why. The Northwest District has had no trouble getting any info I needed. So, and then by the way, Amy, you said that Tim Brennan was decertified while he was out on leave. That's absolutely false. It's misleading and it's friggin' defamatory. That's wrong. He wasn't decertified then. And then finally, someone, whether it be board members, group, paid employees of the town of Hopkinton, is doing their best to destroy Timothy Brennan and keep him from earning a living and feeding his family. And I suggest that immediately stop. And I suggest that the town of Hopkinton Board of Select Board send a letter to Post asking Timothy Brennan to be recertified as a police officer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And being subcontractor, I would assume it would be Harrington and Heap, your attorneys, trying to limit their damage. I would suggest that you order them to send a letter to Post recertifying Timothy Brennan to be able to be a police officer. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He had a new job, but there's people in the background destroying him, and that's not right. He's a citizen of this town. Bennett is not a citizen of this town, nor is Van Rotten is not a citizen of this town. Timothy Brennan is a citizen of this town, and that's your job to take care of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do we have anyone else?
Yeah, he doesn't speak English, so I don't know how to tell anything.
All right. Well, we have to move ahead. We'll come back to it if somebody else wants to speak. I understand there might be a language barrier. Okay? All right, with that, we'll move to item 4 for a moment, and then if somebody wants to come back up, we can do it right after consent agenda. The consent agenda, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. There's minutes from 7:16 and 8:6. The McIntyre Loam sign on Wood Street, the Select Board will consider approving a new sign for McIntyre Loam at 117 Wood Street. The 12-foot square sign is requested by John Palmer on behalf of McIntyre Loam, Inc. It will be located on town property, a portion of the old right-of-way at the end of the driveway at McIntyre Loam. The new sign replaces an existing sign in the same location, will have similar color, size, wording, and placement. The major differences in the addition of the Tommy Tribute, which is a sticker that has been put on all company vehicles and equipment since the passing of the company founder, Tom McIntyre. Select Board approval is required pursuant to zoning bylaw, section 210-178-F, which allows signs within rights-of-ways of certain streets, provided that the sign shall not exceed 20 square feet and shall not be illuminated. We have a new employee. The Select Board will consider confirming the town manager's appointment of Sean Tessier as a heavy equipment operator, and a resignation. The Select Board will consider accepting the resignation of Jeff Barnes from the Conservation Commission. Does anybody want to make a motion to or break anything out from the consent agenda?
Yeah, C and D,
You want to break out C and D, okay?
just for,
Anyone else want to break anything out? Chair will entertain a motion to approve items A and B of the consent agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, all set. Item C, there's the front here.
Actually, I'm going to take D first because
D.
I want to make a motion that we accept the resignation of Jeff Barnes from the Conservation Commission, but I want to accept it with our gratitude for all that he's given to the town, and send him something in that ilk, please.
That is an excellent motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Jeff did a ton of work on behalf of the town of Hopkinton for many, many years, and he will be very much missed. And I'm glad we're recognizing him and getting something out to him. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item C.
Okay, is Sean Tessier here? Okay. I was hoping that he was here so we could introduce him to the public and we could ask him, a few questions about why he wants to work for Hopkinton. But if he's not here, he's not here. So.
We're generally trying to get away from live interviews like that.
Yeah, I know, but that's just an introduction. So,
Would anyone like to make a motion for item C, please?
I move the motion to confirm the town manager's appointment of Sean Tessier, heavy equipment operator, Department of Public Works.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous, and so carries. Sean, welcome to the DPW. With that, and so we go back, and if anyone wanted to do public forum further, I think they're working on something. Is everybody good with public forum now?
They took him out. He went out.
I don't see anybody. Okay, if they come back, we'll try to work it in, but maybe they've decided not. Okay, with that, but let me check, because we're a little ahead of schedule here. The International Marathon Center, we're going to get an update from Tim Kilduff and others. I just want to make sure you're ready to go and all of the folks that you wanted to be here are here. Is that accurate, Mr. Kilduff? Okay. No one said that. It gives you earlier time. If you would be so kind and join us, please, with your colleagues, that'd be great. And if you want to do introductions, not that they are needed, but please, welcome.
Welcome and good evening. We appreciate the time of the Select Board. My name is Mike Lawrence, 43 North Street here in Hopkinton, and I'm serving tonight as a member of the Board of Directors for the 26.2 Foundation, and specifically to provide an update about the International Marathon Center, because it's been a long time since we've been here. We deeply appreciate the partnership we've had with the town. We thought you'd be interested in progress that we have. There are several members of the board present and virtual. Joe Baldica is on his way, Lenny Holden's here, Nick Cordes is here, Bruce McDonald is on Zoom, and Michael Nisa, president's on Zoom, plus Kim Chisholm is here as well, who serves as a development officer for the board. We've developed and secured several partners. It'd be great if we could advance the slide to the next slide. Experts in their field. It's all in the packet that we gave you, so we'd rather spend time on the actual Marathon Center. We do want to highlight Dell Technology. This has been an important partner to us, which we deeply appreciate and we're excited about. We're here tonight to give you an overview of the project, to provide an update, and to share a timeline. In your packets are the slides, project case statement, and a list of the partners, the voice of support. And I would encourage you later tonight to go home and scan the QR code that's in the packet. It's got a fabulous video of a high-end display, a partner of ours that has worked on displays with museums in Washington, D.C. So we're working with the best here. And now we'd like to advance to the next slide and introduce who we affectionately call the Grand Poobah, the 26.2 Foundation, Tim Kilduff.
Brian, at your request, we did supply the information. We're going to blow through, I shouldn't use that term. We're going to quickly go through these slides because you have the material in your packet. But I would ask you as we proceed to reorient your thinking about the marathon. Inevitably, when we start to talk about the International Marathon Center, we get asked two questions. The first is, what does the BAA think? We can answer that. And the second is, what does the town think? So I think what we'd like to do is spend some time reorienting you on the size and the scope of the International Marathon Center. With all due respect, the Boston Marathon will be featured, obviously, in the International Marathon Center, but it is not the focus. We're trying to create a global institution that reaches marathoners all over the world. So it's a very different concept. And I will tell you, there is nothing like this that focuses on the marathon as the platform. There's nothing like this that exists in the world. There just simply isn't. And the other point I would make, as you start looking at our mission statement, it's not just the International Marathons, or marathon is more than running 26.2 miles. Some of you have had that experience. You've had multiple experiences with the running, but as you well know, there's more to running. There's more to a marathon than running, 26.2 miles. And that's sort of the concept that we want to grasp, and the most important element that we'll feature and focus on is the power of the human spirit. And that gets us into a whole host of subjects. And I will, just one more quick point. We see this as a connecting point for issues that are important to us. We could talk 45 minutes about some of the groups that we've been introduced to, but if you look at indigenous people, it's fascinating to know that Tarzan Brown, who won the marathon twice, the story that the Brown family can tell is the kind of story that we're going to be interested in. So it's not just the elite runners who broke a world record last year or something like that. It's far more extensive. So we'd like to have Scott. Scott, you know Scott Richardson, Gorman Richardson Architects. The firm has distinguished itself, and we've been fortunate to have Scott and his team involved with us from day one. And he'll give you a quick overview of the site and the building itself.
Great, thanks, Tim. Next slide. As Tim has mentioned, GRLA has been working with the 26.2 Foundation for a number of years, probably over 10, on basically helping to bring this incredible project to a visualization. So what you see on the screen is a map that basically orients the viewer to where we are proposing this marathon center. That's in the bright green, kind of in the top center of the screen. And that is the land that's the 26.2 Foundation has a long-term lease with the town. Down to the lower left, we know where the Boston Marathon start line is, right there at the Common. But we also wanted to highlight a Team Hoyt statue that's in front of the Center School. And in the near future, we will have a Bobby Gibb sculpture installed at 2 Hayden Row. So we're very excited about that. And then as you head east, obviously you'll be passing by the Marathon Center, and then as you get to Western Nurseries, there is the spirit of the Marathon statue there. So next slide. So we have basically developed a concept that incorporates and responds to the exhibit designs that Healy Kohler have developed, and basically the building responds to those exhibits, and we'll be providing about 8,000 square feet of dedicated interactive exhibit space, a main lobby and entrance hall, which will have about 3,000 square feet of a changing exhibit area. Could go to the next slide. There'll be multi-use space that's available for rental and for activities. There will also be a 250-seat theater, which will provide an orientation experience for first-time visitors and multiple visitors. We envision, again, classrooms, a library, and continuing education that will really focus on health, wellness, and fitness, and how the marathon, as Tim said, is really more than running 26.2 miles. Basically, this will be a world-class facility dedicated to telling the history of the marathon around the world, but also how it ties into health, wellness, and fitness. There'll be, again, we anticipate multiple classes will be visiting this on class trips, so there'll be convenient drop-off and pick-up for buses. And again, there'll be state-of-the-art conference and meeting facilities for rental. Next slide. And there'll be a cafe and gift shop, as well as we anticipate this would be a great focus and location for a trail hub. We anticipate that the north and south trails that exist and will be to be existing in Hopkinton will, again, this will be a kind of a nice organizing location for a trailhead. Next slide just summarizes pretty much what I've just been chatting about. So we're, again, very excited that this project will be instrumental in telling the story of the marathon, will be a world-class building and will bring again, fame to Hopkinton, even more than just the start of the Boston Marathon, but it'll also be a center for marathoners around the world. And back to Tim.
Next slide, please. We'll give you and on to the next one, please. We'll give you just a little quick artist rendering examples of the kind of exhibits we're talking about. State-of-the-art, highly interactive. This would be a room of substantial size, which would have a wraparound screen. That would be the introduction to visitors you are familiar with in museums and in places like the Smithsonian that have this. And that's the introduction to the marathon. I will point out that, again, we're not talking about one marathon. We're talking about going back to 490 BC, which was the Battle of the Marathon, which is essentially the spiritual beginning of the marathon run. Next one, please. Visitors would then enter in. This was sort of the main exhibit area. Every marathon has a different feel, a different spirit to it. So this room is an attempt to try to capture that. One of the highlights of this room is that you'll notice on the left side of the screen, there's an area with someone that looks like they're running. That will be an area where people can literally go in and test the speed, even if they're walking against a world record marathon holder. The other thing that's really important for us is para-athletes. So we'll be able to do that. Wheelchair athletes as well. And then if we can accomplish this, you'll see the screens on the right. Somebody wants to look at the Tokyo Marathon. That'll be will be brought up on the screen in the interactive. Next slide, please. This is one area that I'm particularly excited about. We call this the Hall of Excellence. We don't call it a Hall of Fame. We don't like that term. We like Hall of Excellence because in this hall, we will be able to identify people who have expressed and made contributions to their communities. It could be across the board. One of you could be after your tenure on the select board, could in fact be part of that Hall of Excellence. But we're looking at, again, broadening the base. You'll see the interactive screen. You punch on Joan Benoit. Film will come up about Joan Benoit and her historic contributions to the marathon run. So that'll give you, and then this leads into other areas. There'll be a science and technology area exhibit. Obviously, you know what that's all about. There will also be one around nutrition, health and welfare. So we want to give people a deep dive into all of the aspects of marathoning. And you don't need me to tell you about how important nutrition and fitness is. And the other thing I'll add before we move on to the next slides, this is not a 1 month a year institution. We hear that a lot. Well, you'll have a lot of visitors in April. If we have a lot of visitors in April, and we don't have a lot of visitors throughout the rest of the year, we have not achieved our goal. So this is a 12-month-a-year facility that will be open to the public. And in our licensing agreement with the community, it's really clear that we're open for community use. That's an important part. And I want to touch on the trails. Look, there's a lot of consternation about trails. We are sitting on an opportunity to create trails through this community that will actually benefit not just runners, but the community in general. Just think about if we can ever pull this off, going from Milford through the center of town, through the International Marathon Center, up through Legacy Farms, and connecting with the state park. There's not a place in eastern Massachusetts that can speak to that kind of potential. Okay, next slide, please. I'm not going to go through this. We are in the process. We have contracted with a consulting firm. They are in the process of doing an economic study on the potential and the benefits to the community. We expect that to be done in about a month. And as soon as we have that report, we'll be happy to share it with you. But it's pretty clear. You know, we don't, the last item, leverage Hopkins Marathon footprint. I will tell you, out of Jack Fleming's mouth, the president of the BAA said there is no other major marathon in the world that starts in a community like this. It simply doesn't exist. You go to New York and they start on a bridge. Well, good for them. So that's a real benefit for us. This International Marathon Center, coupled with what's happening in Main Street, makes this a pretty exciting place to visit. So that's really what we're looking at. Next slide, please. This is where we stand at this point. We're talking about a $35 million project, privately funded. The capital campaign, we've got a strategy, we've got that laid out. You have a case statement in your packets. You can see the goals for 24. We're in a quiet phase. We're talking to people who are interested in the projects we're talking about. I have not found, you all know me, I have not found one person, not one person has, well, they may have said you're crazy, but I have found one person that said this is not a good idea and this is not doable. So this is the outline and the objective. We're hope to start, we will start doing informal sessions with Conservation, Planning Board, and so forth to start this process moving. But this is all great. We've got tremendous support in the community, but it's the money that counts. We have to start bringing those donations in. Next slide. Just take 1 second. Amby Burfoot is a Boston Marathon champion. He's the former editor of Runner's World. He's written about 8 books in and around marathoning. This captures what we're trying to do in Hopkinton as clearly, as concisely as we found. And I just take 30 seconds. That really says it all. And I'll leave you with one point, an important one. We have in this community something called the Hopkins Center for the Arts, which draws people from 30 some odd communities. We have a facility that's run by the Metro West YMCA, and we now have the 26.2 Foundation. The collaboration and the possibilities that exist, we're already starting to discuss. That's a powerful story and a powerful set of really quality organizations that you have at your fingertips. If we're going to succeed, this needs to be a community-supported event, and we've had that so far. So we'd be happy to respond to any questions, comments that you have. And there may be others out here that have questions. We'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in this evening and giving us an update. I'm a big believer in this, as you know. I think it's a great opportunity, not only for Hopkinton, but for Metro West and for Massachusetts. I think it enhances our brand significantly in a very positive way. And brand development is something we all should strive for as, leaders in the community, trying to drive the business of Hopkinton and drive the culture of Hopkinton to a great place. So I love it, but let's go to the board. Mrs. Ritterbusch.
I thank you for bringing the presentation to us, and I am really excited about it, and I wish you luck with all the fundraising. It looks, I hope it can all come to fruition in not too long. Yeah.
Love seeing the progress. Thank you for keeping us involved. If there's anything we can do to support you guys further, love to know, but I think this is a great thing.
There are marathons everywhere. I mean, there's Washington, Chicago, Berlin, London, everywhere, Maine, New Hampshire. And what I think that you guys need, or that we need as a town too, is some sort of a dog and pony show to go to each marathon and give our case. Let marathoners everywhere know this is happening, and that it's happening for them, as much as for the Boston Marathon or for Hopkinton in general. It's happening for the world of marathoners. And I think we have to kind of get out there and spread the word with them. I mean, there's a BAA in all of these communities. Don't call themselves that, but they're organizers. We really have to send people there to talk to them, too, and get the word out that this is for the world and not just for Hopkinton and Boston.
Mr. Mena.
No, along the same lines, great vision, and we have wonderful leaders, dedicated community leaders on it. Thank you for your work and pushing it forward. Certainly super excited and a believer of it as well. And I believe that we are a proud marathon town, and this will add the icing on the top, and certainly can't wait for it to happen. And I would just ask if there is anything you think from the board or from the town administration we can do to help or to expedite the mission, please let us know. And one thing comes to mind is I know 35 million, you're on it and progressing on that front. If there is any opportunity to, ground break or anything to take advantage of our CPC fund or anything like that. I don't know if you have explored that, but any way we can, expedite, I'm all for it.
Groundbreaking would be a good thing.
Well, we hear you, and the sooner the better. This is the start for us. We're in a different phase. We need to be, in all honesty, much more assertive. We always want to be polite, but now we need to be assertive, and we need to move this idea out beyond the community. That's where the resources are going to come from. So your support is critical. I told you that's the first question people ask. What's the community think? The second is, what does the BAA think? And they're clearly a supporter of ours. We're meeting this week with members of the Board of Governors of the BAA. We'll formalize that relationship going forward. But the 26.2 Foundation has been receiving charity numbers since 1996. So when we move forward, we communicate with them.
Great. Well, we're very excited. I think everybody here, we're all representing the town of Hopkinton residents, and this would be a really great opportunity for the community, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm thrilled that we're working on it.
So,
we wish you the best, and we're here to help.
So there's one more thing you can do. We have just started to work with the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and we are offering a license plate.
Oh, cool.
And I'm sure you'll all be interested in that. We're excited about this. We've done a lot of research on it. We've also received a lot of interest. And so let me just... This is a keychain for your car keys when you get your new license plate.
Thank you.
Mine's coming up pretty soon.
So how much is a license plate? I see there's an extra $100 for the first 100, but where does it say what the plate itself is?
What is it again? $40.
Top of your registration fee every 2 years.
Nice.
Nice.
Very cool.
It's really nice.
Everything we do in terms of promotion is grounded here in this community. So there's a lot of exposure for Hopkinton as well.
It's an excellent idea.
That's great. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Okay, following that great news, let's move to finances. I believe our CFO is here and others, and if they could join us. Elaine, do you want to introduce the topic?
Yes, and I'll introduce who's here. CJ Paquette, Treasurer Collector, and Tyler Lovegear, CFO. And they're here to provide the fourth quarter investment and deposit report.
Great, thank you.
Hello.
Please, go right ahead.
So we're going to just do a general overview of the report. I won't read it verbatim.
Thank you.
So just to go over it really quick, this is covering the period of April 1st to June 30th, so the end of the fiscal year. We earned close to $1 million in income for this quarter, so we're happy with that. We have noticed that interest rates are stabilizing. We're actually expecting they may decrease in the coming months due to some rumors of the Fed Reserve lowering the prime rate. So we are expecting that for this current quarter we're in to start seeing a decline in interest rates. But in other news for finance, we have decided proactively to transfer some of our money from MMDT. We had a very large amount of money in that depository trust. So we vetted different banks, looked for the best rates, tried to look for our best options. And we found Country Bank, which is fully insured through FDIC and DIF, which do municipal banking, which is hard to find. For it to be fully insured and to do municipal banking, it's hard to find now. So we worked with them really closely for a long time, thought of our options. Kyla, myself, and Elaine both all agreed that this is a good thing. So we are earning a 5% interest rate on a money market, which keeps our funds fully liquid, so we don't have to worry about it's in a short-term CD. We have to wait until it matures to withdraw from it. It's a money market, so we can take out of it whenever we need. So in our opinion, we just thought having $60+ million in one bank account is a lot of money to have parked in one spot. We did lose a little bit of interest on the rates, the difference between MMDT and Country Bank, but we think it's the best interest in the town to have it protected over earning a 0.5 percentage more with MMDT. The state law does require that the highest possible rate of interest reasonably available be accounted for, taking account of safety, liquidity, and yield. So with that said, we all were in agreement that the safety and liquidity is more important than the 0.5 percentage rate on the interest. So a little bit of back history for Country Bank, just for the residents. I know it's a lot of money to be transferring. Country Bank is a well-known bank to municipalities. They're used by a few dozen municipalities around the area. They're fully insured, like I said, through FDIC and DIF. Their most recent Veribank rating, which is who we use to vet our banks, is a green triple star, which is the highest rating Veribank gives. So that's always a good sign. Additionally to that, it's a blue ribbon designation from Veribank. And basically what the blue ribbon is it's a recognition for banks for meeting unusually high standards and exceptional attention to safety and soundness. So you don't see that with many banks. We're really excited to see that, and we check that monthly. So they send us a report if banks' ratings change within the area, and we review that. Right now, banks are pretty stable, especially the banks we bank with. We haven't seen many changes. Like I said, Kyla and I and Elaine had all worked on this together, and we think it's a great thing for our future. So in line with the fiscal year 25 budget, we transferred $853,371 to OPEB, $700,000 to stabilization, and $1,094,024 to the school stabilization fund in July. We finalized the prudent investor legislation that was approved at the 2022 town meeting under Article 50. This was approved unanimously, but it was never put into effect by the town. I think there may have been a change of the treasurers at that point, so it kind of got lost. So we were able to find the vote and see it was voted unanimously. So we're working with our investors to get that set in place. And then last but not least, we look forward to presenting in January. We decided to do it every 2 quarters instead of every quarter.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to share?
No, you'll see later.
We may have some questions, so just hang on there.
Yeah.
Mr. Manat.
No, this is good news, and I think overall return-wise. Just to recap, what was the key difference, coverage and interest rate-wise between the two banks? Can you reiterate?
Yep. So MMDT is not covered by any insurance. MMDT, it stands for Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust. So it is a state organization, but it does not have any insurance. So
Other than FDIC.
other than the 250 FDIC. So that's a lot of money that we had parked in one place that's not insured. Granted, they've never had a failure since 1980, but with the recent, kind of unstable markets we've seen with some banks, we just thought it might be a good idea to move some of it around.
Sure, and the country bank covers it all?
Yes, Country Bank is fully insured, so 100% of that deposit's insured. So it's a 0.5% less interest with Country Bank versus MMDT. And that's mostly because Country Bank is, a working bank, so they do have to make a profit somewhere.
No, thank you. I understood it. I just wanted to make sure everyone
Yeah.
gets it clearly and appreciate that oversight and action. I think it's very important given that what we have seen with SVB and other banks
Correct.
in their recent times. So good move. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I was looking over numbers and different things, and I am just really pleased with your report and your reportings. We certainly have diversified a lot compared to what we had years ago, and that's really, I think, part of what's keeping us afloat. Now, from this information, I get the feeling that the town is in really pretty good shape, and our real problem now is debt. How do we convert some of this money into lowering the debt?
So as far as lowering debt, I guess free cash could be used to pay off debt at a town meeting vote.
Town meeting vote, yeah.
Yep. So accrued interest that we get throughout the year ends up in free cash. It's not budgeted for. So any interest we earn does go towards free cash, which then could be used for whatever the town decided.
And it's really more of a strategy discussion as opposed to.
Yeah, it's going to come up. Yeah, it's coming along. Thank you very much, but this is wonderful.
All set? Mrs. Ritterbush.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us and putting all the detail in the packet. I think the public really appreciates that. You had mentioned that you were only going to do every other quarter. You're going to come before us, but will you still be posting a quarter report on the website every quarter? Okay, I wanted to make sure that that would be happening. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions, but I really do appreciate the detailed information.
Of course.
First of all, thank you. This was extremely helpful. This was really my first chance to kind of dig into the investment side of things. Your report was very straightforward. I agree with kind of the strategies that you've taken. So that was all very good. I just had a couple questions around, like, how long have we been working with Bartholomew?
So we don't know an exact date of when Bartholomew started, but for the...
Can you explain who Bartholomew is, please? Just
Yes,
folks.
Bartholomew is an investment company that works with, I can't tell you the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a pretty high percentage of municipalities in the state. So their main focus is with municipal investments. They have a whole dedicated team that works specifically with municipalities. Like I said, I can't go back and say a specific date of when it started off the top of my head, but it's been in existence for a while.
Okay. And totally understand that. So do you feel like our positions have changed a lot over the last couple of years? Because I look at kind of the diversification between equities, fixed income, which I was assuming was, when I started digging in, a split between kind of government-backed bonds, corporate bonds, correct? Do you feel like those positions have changed over the last couple of years?
We're both fairly
Yeah.
new to these roles, but from what we've seen, it hasn't changed significantly.
Right.
But part of the prudent investor legislation is to allow us to diversify even further. So we hope to dive into that with them in the future.
Okay.
Right now, a lot of the investments are invested in what the state calls the safe list. So that basically gives our financial advisors a list of companies that the state says, okay, these are what you can invest in, and it's a pretty small list.
Yeah, I noticed like a lot of blue chip stocks, at least for the equities part. And again, I'm very new to this whole municipal finance thing. So like, just what's both your personal opinion on when I see like our equities, specific investments in blue chips, like why would we do that over a mutual fund that had those same types of stocks kind of already built in there?
We can take that up with Bartholomew. We haven't had those in-depth conversations yet, but we can definitely.
Okay.
The notion of a safe list, that's probably subject to some interpretation, right? And across America, there's all kinds of views about what the safe list probably is. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are going to get into this a little bit and start to dig and try and figure out what makes the most sense for the community. Understanding, you know.
Safe lists.
I'm sorry?
We did print off the.
Okay.
There you go. It's not very long.
It's not very long, and I will say it's very outdated. So it's a lot of, you know, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's, the pretty common stuff that comes, you know, pretty much stays the same. It might grow a little bit, but it might go down a little bit, tends to stay the same.
I think a full review of where we're investing, you know, I know you got a long list of things you got to do, new in the roles, but something like that would probably make a lot of sense. Okay?
For sure.
Anything else?
No, that's helpful.
So you've mentioned Country Bank a couple of times.
Yes.
This is not countrywide.
No.
Okay, Countrywide was a failed financial institution that a lot of people suffered through years ago. So this has nothing to do with Countrywide, right?
Country
I know that, but I'm just wanting to make that very clear.
I should have went on to detail a little bit more about Country Bank. They're a local bank to Massachusetts. We try, obviously, our hardest to keep everything local to support our businesses around us. So they're not a huge bank. They're decent size. I'd say they're pretty relevant to Unibank in size. They're local. They've been in business since 1850. It's a savings bank.
But nothing to do with Countrywide.
But nothing to do. I know that, but I just want to make sure because we can hear it now a little bit. Okay, great. And you mentioned early on about state regulations on a piece of the discussion here a little bit ago. So DOR is all over this in terms of what we're doing with these banks, and we're following all that. There's no, is DOR even involved in this?
It's Mass General Law, actually. That sets the terms. So Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 55B, talks about how the treasurer can invest funds.
Okay.
And kind of the importance, in their opinion, of how it's invested. So highest possible rate first, and then safety, liquidity, and yield after that. So
Any transaction, do we have to go outside of Hopkinton to get approval from the state, like at the DOR?
No, it's a recommendation from Mass General Law.
Interesting. They kind of regulate us in a lot of ways, but they don't regulate us about where we put $60 million.
No, but we also have to follow the town of Hopkinton financial policy.
Yeah.
To make sure that we are remaining diligent there.
Yeah. And in your years of experience in your career, you feel good about this, right? Because I know you've got some serious experience with things like this. Okay, great. All right, any other questions, comments?
One last one. So I know you said, and you're both kind of like newer to this, so we're heading into budgeting season. I know how busy that's going to be. Do you expect to kind of dig into the investments ahead of the next, 2 quarters away meeting, 2 quarters update?
Yeah, we can do that.
Just curious, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Of course.
Item number 7, the redaction policy. Mrs. Lazarus, if you want to introduce this topic for us, please.
Thank you. In your packet is a draft policy prepared by Brian Bertram, Town Council, in response to the discussion with the board of redacting documents before release.
Okay.
And Brian is here as well.
Brian, if you wouldn't mind joining us. Do you want Brian to walk through the policy a little bit, Elaine, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, I think we can walk through the policy, but it does, as a town employee who has had to, deal with records requests over time and consider redactions, it is, I think, something useful for town employees to process these requests. So I'm happy to do it.
Okay. I think it's a fairly lengthy document. Is that fair?
It is definitely lengthy. You try to approach it from the standpoint of somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience doing this. So when I wrote it, I didn't assume anything. You try to break everything down into each of the discrete steps that you'd want to do. And we also, some of the length of it is, we just wanted to make it helpful in the sense of, giving a short summary, for example, of all of the exemptions in the public records law. One can go to the public records law guide, but, giving people sort of a one-stop shop, if you will, to sort of say, these are the kinds of things I need to be looking at. And since there's a number of exemptions, that's probably a good almost 2 pages of this. But yeah, there's some length to this, but I think when you're actually doing the process itself, that's really section 2, which is the general redaction procedures, and sort of the rest of it is to try to impart knowledge on an employee who may not do this a lot, to say, you should take frequent breaks. If you're doing a lengthy document, you should break it up over several days. These are the types of things that are exempt from disclosure. When we redact, these are the things to be careful with, so.
Do you want to present further, Brian, or do you want to just have a dialogue with us, or how do you want to do it?
I don't know that I have too much else to add to it. I mean, I think that if I'm giving you sort of my elevator speech, right, like what is the real takeaway to this? It is that every redaction process has one responsible employee. So, the buck stops with somebody to just keep a record that each of the steps are followed. There are at least 2 sets of eyes on every redaction project with sort of 3 checks. An initial, review of it, second set of eyes to go through it, then you implement the actual redactions, the physical, or I guess in these days it's electronic, sort of blacking things out, and then sort of a final check once that's done to be careful. That's sort of the core of it. The way it's written for really sensitive records, lengthy records, there's instructions to notify the town manager's office. You can add additional reviewers. You can do different things to supplement it. But I would say that's the core of it. And beyond that, I'm happy to engage in a dialogue. Again, I tried to write this so that somebody could essentially read it and follow it. So, hopefully it's self-explanatory when one reads it.
Great, thank you. So just one question or comment, and then we'll kind of go to everyone else, just to set this up maybe a little bit. Obviously, this is in response to the situation we had in town earlier this year. This is in response to you coming before the board about a month or so back, maybe 6 weeks ago now, to discuss what happened and what should we do different going forward. Right?
Yep.
So my question is, in this redaction policy that you're presenting and proposing, what's different now than what went on earlier this year?
Sure. So, well, first off, it's formalized in a written document. I would say that I engaged in a lengthy discussion of kind of what went wrong the last time. And I think if I was to emphasize sort of what this policy really tries to address is I think I left one of the things that I said is there was a lot of people with opportunity to catch the mistake, but not a lot of people with the responsibility, if you will. So, the idea of this policy at its core to address the failure isn't to really tell people, review the record better. That doesn't work with human beings. We all make mistakes. It's to assign sort of one person to keep track of, has this person done it? And then when we circulated it to these other people, did they look at it too? And it really is to add that, sort of level of discipline to make sure you're going through all of those checks and doing some additional things so that there's not essentially a miss. I can tell you that would have addressed some of the issues before. I can't tell you that there will never be a mistake again, but certainly, in looking with a lot of humility and self-reflection on what happened the last time, I wrote this policy, not only to implement the things that one would typically do when redacting, but to look at what went wrong previously and to try to control for that and address it.
So you're proposing that the town adopts this redaction policy, correct?
That's correct, and it would.
Was your firm also adopt this redaction policy.
Yeah, if it
Parallel with us.
Yeah, if this is, the town of Hopkinton's policy, in my view, it would apply not just to town employees, but to anybody who works for the town, and that would include us. So anything we do for Hopkinton, we would have to follow this policy.
Thank you. Mrs. Ritterbusch.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. So that was one of my questions. We've not had a written policy for this before, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then in one place, or many places, it mentions sensitive records and says defined later. I didn't see where they were actually defined, so maybe that could be added somewhere.
Sure, I may not have.
And then, so this is a really but good, long, and comprehensive process. But we also have the 10-day limit usually to provide public records. And I know we can ask for an extension when something is taking longer than 10 days, which of course we would do. But it made me wonder too if we need to budget to hire more staff, like another public records officer, or budget more for attorneys, because the second sensitive records would need to also be reviewed by the attorney if people were unsure. And then, let's see. Yeah, I think those are the questions that I had that hadn't been answered.
I can look through it if in one of the revisions, the definition of sensitive records got deleted as, this was lengthy. We were trying to sort of winnow it down to its core essence and not have it be too long. We can certainly add that back in. In terms of hiring another employee, that is frankly the difficulty of the public records law for a lot of towns your size, is that unfortunately, it's not a linear conveyor belt of requests, and you can sort of say, okay, we need this number of people because we get this number of requests a week. The reality is that they fluctuate, they go up and down, and so, there may be potentially times where the town may need to hire a temporary employee or somebody like that. But I would really sort of leave that to the town manager. I think that, just adding an employee for public records might put you in a situation where, you've increased, you have another salary, potentially benefits, and then the person is idle in a slow period of time for records. It's probably good you're not the city of Boston, but, a city that size gets a lot more requests, and it's a little easier to have dedicated employees than a town the size of Hopkinton.
That's more of a question for budget season. Or we could even budget stipended money or like you're saying, for a temporary worker, for as needed.
Yep.
Thank you. I like the work that went into this. So you mentioned that if Hopkinton adopts this, you guys working on behalf of Hopkinton would adopt the same procedures, correct?
I would go beyond adopt. I mean, it's a directive to us. We follow the town's directives, and so this would apply to us.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, so in a scenario like that, I mean, all of these procedures talk about like appointing an employee, right? Mm-hmm. Is that something that if we appoint one from Hopkinton, you would appoint one from your side under review as well? Do we appoint your firm specifically?
I would suggest that in each case we could, if there's a referral to legal, I could work that out with the town manager. I would be, I would envision the best way to do the policy is not having two people sort of do the same job and trying to pass it off. The idea is that there's one person whose job is to say this, there's 9 steps. This is the checklist, right? We did this one. We did this one. And then there's one document at the end before the records go out, and there's, I'm old school. I'm thinking of like a pencil check or something next to it, but there's a check mark next to everything, and it's unambiguous. We did all of it. So that's sort of the way I view it.
Okay. Thank you.
What's that?
Yep.
Mary Jo?
Well, I'm terribly glad to have some kind of document to use as a guideline. I just would like to know, this is going to be lengthy. It's a lengthy process. We're not going to be able to give out a document the next day or anything like that. And, people are impatient today. So how do we let them know that this is the process and this is what we're doing to get them the documentation they want?
We can certainly, if we get a request for records I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that lengthy. If it's a 3-page document, there's a lot of steps, but there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of text to review. So that could be fairly quickly. There are requests that maybe for emails or whatever else where there's more work than people may appreciate that goes into the background, particularly by the IT folks who have to run the searches and pull stuff together. So I think when we get that kind of request, so one of the first things you do, and in the policy, you sort of evaluate the records, create a duplicate record set. We're going to have a pretty early sense of just how long this might take. And there's nothing that prohibits the town from reaching out to the requester and saying, hey, look, we've identified X number of potential records. We need to review them for redactions. The reality is in email infrastructure, a lot of times the same email will generate like 3 or 4 records because it's coming from each inbox, so it just takes us longer. And so I think that that's sort of the stage early on where one can reach out to the requester and say, look, we have to review these things. There's a lot of records. It's going to take us a little bit of time. If we need to request an extension from the Supervisor of Public Records office, the requester, gets a copy of that. But there's nothing that would prohibit us even before that from just shooting a quick email, picking up a phone, making a quick phone call to say, this is our expected time frame. This is sort of where we are.
Thank you.
Mr. Manon.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Brian, for the good work, and appreciate your humility. I think spending a lot of time is warranted on this and very important given the context. So fully appreciate that and your colleagues.
I'm sorry. Mr. Manon, please finish. Go ahead.
I have a few observations and suggestions and then a couple of questions. One is that it would be helpful to have a kind of flow diagram somewhere so we can follow it a little more clearly and communicate to the town residents as well in a brief manner. Second is kind of question and comment. Do we have a way to categorize the documents based on the sensitivity or level of sensitivity? And the reason I ask that is I think for, and I know we get sometimes a significant number of document requests, like emails and others, but if we can categorize them appropriately, the ownership that you mentioned, which is great, can also be assigned based on the level of sensitivity. In other words, an ongoing investigation document versus an email from, what Mr. Manan wrote last week. There's difference unless, there's some significant other case involved. So if in that case, the latter case, when it's highly sensitive, how can we ensure there is, some more additional scrutiny or level of expertise that we can assign more? Of course, we can't assign it to all 500 requests. That's one thing to think about. And second is, maybe you have it, but I didn't read the whole document as detailed. What is the final approval process? So we have an employee, and it could be by employee, an assigned employee from your firm who works for the town on consulting basis. But eventually, when it's done, before it goes out, what is the approval mechanism? I see the reviews for second, third, which is great. Can you elaborate a little bit?
The final step in the process is that the responsible employee, shall confirm with all those involved in writing that each step of these procedures is complete. So that to me is the, checkbox or electronic or whatever. It's basically everything set to go out the door, but now we're going to confirm that we went through each of the steps. And then once that happens, the records at that point are deemed ready for production. And I think at that point it's the records access officer, whether it came in through the clerk's office or a specific records access officer within a department who probably transmits them back, unless, along the way there were discussions that sort of put it somewhere else. So for example, if you had a high sensitivity record, again, since you're having the discussion early on about what does this review set look like, that discussion is likely to entail their police records or their tax records, or, if we get challenged to a petition or something, it might be like signature cards or whatever. There's so many different things that may come in, and it really is going to depend on what the record is and who is the responsible keeper of the records, and that may be that person at the end who gives the go-ahead. Or if they're particularly sensitive, it may be the town manager's office. I think that it's just going to vary depending on what was asked for and what is the size of the request.
Thank you. That makes sense.
I love the idea of a flow chart, some kind of flow diagram to help people kind of visualize, if this, then that, if that, then that sort of thing, and follow the path, which is great. Obviously, we would need a training program within town hall, within town government in general. And this applies to everybody except the school department. Is that correct? This would apply to everybody except the school department because they do their own thing there, and they have their own redaction process, and they obviously have to do a lot of redaction there as well. But we're not talking about the schools, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So who would we identify as needing to be trained?
I would say at least every record access officer, and then we would potentially, we'll have to involve more people, train anyone who, in a department who will be involved in reviewing those departments' records.
Yeah, so I think we have to build that comprehensive list. I don't think it's just department heads, right? I mean, I don't know, like, you tell us, but.
No, it isn't just.
My sense is we'd have to have others trained as well. But I think we have to go through a formal training process for redaction records and this new redaction policy. And we'd have to make sure that there's some kind of, I don't want to say exam, but some kind of sign off by your firm and maybe your office somewhere that those 28 individuals have gone through this training and they've demonstrated proficiency in doing the work that we're describing here that needs to be done. So I think a training program would be an important piece of this puzzle to add. And I guess the one person who owns it, that'll change depending on the situation. Those are the two real big things I wanted to mention. This does slow things down, though. And, we had a comment earlier this evening at the beginning of the meeting about a FOIA request that was filed and still haven't heard feedback and so forth. I mean, by way of example, is the redaction policy or what was the redaction process at that time, is that slowing things down in that particular case that do you know, or what's going on there?
I think a lot of the searches for emails, depending on that request, there was a very large email set that was returned, and then, we have to review each of those emails for things. I mean, it can be as benign as a personal email address, but under Exemption C, the privacy exemption, we actually do redact those. So if somebody sent you something from their personal email, we go through the emails, we make a log of it, IT creates a PDF, they redact it. So it just takes us some time.
That particular case is still a project ongoing, is that fair?
I think it's just about done. I would expect that it would be responded to within the next day or two.
All right, thank you. And would all this, though, eventually flow, it would flow to Joe's point, it's going to flow to your firm, it's going to flow, would it all flow through a lane, though? Like, I guess when we say one person owns it, one person in each department owns it, or one person owns it? Like, there's a big difference there, in my view.
I mean, there are different records access officers for different departments, and so they would be managing the records requested from that department.
Can you go a little deeper there, please, Elaine? A Records Act officer?
So the town clerk is the main records access officer, and the town clerk designates additional records access officers in certain departments that receive a volume of requests. So, for example, a records request to the land use department, for example, for property records. It's very routine, typically no redactions necessary, it gets processed very quickly. But in other departments or across many departments, say emails, that's something that multiple people are going to be working on. And for something like this, would there have to be one person designated to be the contact?
And who would make that decision? Would you make that decision as the town manager?
I think it would be made depending on who is most familiar with the content of the records and who knows what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess maybe my question is, who tracks and manages what one person, okay, how about this? What one person tracks and manages who the one person is? Do you know what I'm saying?
So the overall records access officer is the town clerk, so perhaps that's.
It could be any person. I think that it's just in regard to each request, it could vary, and we need to find some person. A lot of times these requests cut across departments, and so the point to having one person, whomever it is that's designated, is to avoid the scenario where you have one hand not, doing something, the other one doesn't know about it, and having a miss. So it could be the clerk, it could be the town manager's office, it could be, it could be as simple as saying, look, we have, I don't know how we manage our requests, but if we have a list of requests, if it's a database or whatever, you create a field in the database. This is the person who's tracking this one. Just something that, keeps that, and then someone would be the keeper of the records. I don't know who that is.
Maybe it's a database. Maybe that's all it is, but there's got to be some way of tracking who's been assigned so that there's no ambiguity about who that one person is from wherever they are in town government.
Hey, Brian, could I add something? Because we do this at work too, but there are software systems you could purchase, and Wellesley had looked at one that would be for the police and the town clerk and the school department would all use that, and that would store that sort of information about who was working on it, when it was processed. And then if someone else makes the exact same request, it's already right there ready, the final redacted document that could be given out. And I think there are other software programs similarly. There's probably a variety.
We have looked at a few of those.
Yep.
Yeah,
So we
I
could
think the
do
town
that.
clerk's office, I know they had run that by me at one point that they were looking at. I don't know the status of that candidly, but I know it was being looked into.
But they're not free. That's
It seems like the town clerk's office is the logical choice here, but we'd obviously have to have the town clerk on board, and, there's work there, so we'd have to figure it out. Anything else?
Through the chair, I think this is great progress, and thank you again. And if we add some of these clarifications, that would be super helpful. Now, with all these discussions, just to be clear among ourselves and for the town as residents, can you take a little bit of pain of walking us through what the new process would be should we had to redact the document that got messed up again?
Yeah, so the request would come in. It would come into some records access officer. In this case, it would probably be the police department and the records access officer there. That would be certainly a sensitive record request, as is frankly most things that go to the police department, given the nature of records that they keep. So the town manager's office would be notified. We go through each of the steps. So we would, designate a responsible employee. I think those discussions would yield somebody pretty senior for that. And then you would do, you always create a duplicate of record set. I don't want to skip any steps, but we obviously never work with originals here. You would do a first line review. So that would just be the first pass. The person who's doing that is, sort of noting places where there would be a redaction. Are there keywords that are associated with those types of redactions? Keeping a list of those words, which we will use later for OCR searches through the document. If it's a lengthy record, that person should be taking frequent breaks. They may have to break it up over several days, but then they get done. And so they hand it off to another person who hasn't looked at the records yet, essentially a fresh set of eyes. That person goes through, with the record that was previously redacted, that was previously reviewed for redaction. So the redactions at that point are flagged. They do a second review, fresh set of eyes under the same protocols. Since it's a sensitive record, you would actually probably have another person of a supervisory level do another review as well in that particular document. When all of that, and frankly, there's nothing in this policy that would prohibit you from adding as many layers of review as you want, subject to the time constraints of responding to the request. So once you have had all the reviewers you deem are necessary to review it, at that point, you would have to look at the policy, actually. I'm running on memory here, but so we did all that. So at that point, we sort of confirm that all of those reviews are done. You implement the redactions, so that's the electronic actually going through. And under this policy, it's pretty specific. You're probably going to want to use some form of redaction software. Actually, you are going to want to use some form of redaction software. There's horror stories from years ago where people would black things out in Microsoft Word or something, and you copy or paste the information out of it. So you do that, you basically create sort of this record set that is presumably redacted. At that point, the keyword list that was developed when everything was visible, you can run those types of searches through. In this case, that almost certainly would have caught the mistake. And then in any event, once you have the redacted record set, then you have to go back and have somebody review with it actually blacked out to make sure one final time that we're satisfied with the record that's being produced. So yeah, I'm confident that this protocol taken, in each step would have caught that.
Thank you. Thank you for the walkthrough. It sounds robust enough. And at the end, so the assigned person, he or she would finally be making the comfortable call of releasing it.
Yeah, the responsible employee would be making the confident call that, okay, every single thing was checked off on here. I feel comfortable that the protocol was followed, that multiple people have put their eyes on this, with a responsibility to catch anything that should be caught, and so that they would have the comfort, not in just the people, but in the process. I mean, that at the end of the day is what you're doing, is constructing a process that has several layers that takes the human element of mistake out of it, and you can be confident that a reliable process was followed.
Thank you, Brian. And I'm taking
So our agenda item had us consider a draft policy for redacting public records. And I think we've given some feedback on some things that maybe can enhance the draft policy that's before us this evening. So it's not that we would need to vote on anything right now. I think it would be important to take this feedback, Brian, and go back and kind of tweak a few things. I do believe we're on the right path here to get a much more stringent and robust, to your word, Mr. Manon, process in place, which I think is great. But I'm not sure we're there just yet. Is there a timeline that do we have anything major that we have to consider that we're holding off on because of this or anything like that? Are we proceeding now with what we would typically?
No,
well, we don't want to typically do what we did in the past, right? So no. How are we, what's the transition look like, I guess is my question.
I mean, the transition for me is that anything that comes across my desk will follow, the draft as we update it.
For us to adopt the policy as a community, as a local government.
I mean, I can turn the suggested tweaks around this week if we want to expedite that. That's not a problem.
And what are your thoughts on when we want to vote on something of this nature?
Yeah, I think as soon as we can, and we will start using it right away as far as the procedures go. And as soon as we can adopt that and disseminate it to everyone else, I think that would be great, and begin some training.
So could we target the next meeting for this?
Sure.
Is that okay with everybody else?
Yeah.
You good? Okay.
I would just add that if we are given a supposedly redacted document from anywhere, we can't assume that it is. We have to put our process on top of that.
We have to complete our process, do all the checkoffs.
Even if we received it from a consultant or something.
Okay, let's table it for now. Brian, thank you for your work. I appreciate your follow-up, and we'll go from here. That's good. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 8 on the agenda is the Bay Path Humane Society, a lease amendment at 66 Fruit Street. The Select Board will review a proposed amendment to the Bay Path lease agreement for a 5-acre parcel at 66 Fruit Street, which would grant a 1-year extension of time to begin construction and allow an increase in building square footage. Elaine.
So as you know, the town leases a 5-acre parcel at 66 Fruit Street to Bay Path Humane Society, and they are working on their fundraising and development of plans to construct an animal shelter at that location. The town has a lease with Bay Path, and they have, there's some provisions in there, and they're requesting an extension of 1 year to begin construction as they go through the permitting process. And also to allow an increase in building square footage by an additional 2,000 square feet, based on the building design and the modern needs of animal shelters.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
And just one quick question. Why is it for 1 year? Is that sufficient, you think, or that's the protocol?
They're asking for, I think they're working on their plans, and I think are embarking on the permitting process with the planning board shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Jo?
No, I'm inclined to give them the year that they want. They have been fundraising. They do need more money and more space, so I'm inclined to give it to them.
Okay. Joe?
No questions. I agree with Mary Jo. Seems like an easy one.
Mrs. Ritterbush?
Yep, I appreciate the detail they provided, and it does look like they're well on their way to finishing their fundraising, so I have no problem giving them 1 year.
Great. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the lease amendment at 66 Fruit Street to grant a 1-year extension of time to begin construction and allow an increase in building square footage.
So moved.
Second.
Any further, sorry?
And does that authorize the town manager to sign the lease amendment documents?
Keep forgetting about this motion stuff. Where am I on here?
Want me to read the whole motion?
If you would, please.
I move to approve the amendment to the Bay Path Humane Society lease and to authorize the town manager to sign the lease amendment documents.
Okay, so we have that motion. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Sorry, okay, great. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous, so carries. All set on number 8. Item number 9, discuss budgetary planning measures, including hiring review and capital planning. The select board will discuss future budget planning measures, including town employee hiring review and capital planning. Ms. Lazarus.
So this is one of the future agenda items that the board identified. We'll be embarking on the budget process next month. So this is a good time to start talking about the measures that you may be considering putting into effect and planning processes going forward.
And just to add on that note, as I have proposed it to be one of the items, part of it is we're going to go through the budget and capital process, capital approval process. But I also wanted to have the board, us together, discuss about the strategy going forward on our capital budget, our capital project selection process, our budget process. And as I spoke to our CFO, Kyla, and also to our school superintendent, board members, our appropriations chair, Mike Manning, and also CPC chair, then kind of rallying the concept that we may want to revisit our fiscal policy, budget policy, and see where we can tune them or make it more appropriate for the time we are going through now, especially with some of the big capital projects, our debt service costs going up. We want to be a little more diligent and procedural, in my view, how we evaluate. And CPC is doing a great job. Everyone's doing a great job. But in a more consistent, coherent way, we can evaluate based on a set of criteria that we all philosophically and town's vision and strategy-wise agree on, and even coming up with some kind of scoring mechanism based on what is our urgency, what is our good-to-have type of projects, and how it would impact our overall time horizon in terms of tax impact. So more to formalize and firm that up. And I spoke to Kyla, and she's doing a great job in firming it up in a framework and structure, and so is Susan and all the other key players will contribute to it. And then the second part of it is that also coming up with more of a revision or review of our budgetary policy that we follow in terms of how do we kind of tune it better. So for example, the risk management that we have been doing for OPEB or risk management we do for our stabilization and others, for great reasons, we want to continue to do that. But is there a room for some of the risk balancing based on where we are? And is there room for kind of revisiting some of the core principles that we follow or just refresher as a whole. So overall strategy, principal framework, and kind of structure for capital budgets and our budgeting process. So I'm hoping that we can have that session, and through the input from all the key players, Kyla can take the lead and help us kind of lay out what are the proposed new framework, strategy, and principles could be. We can discuss it and have it kind of farmed up before we dive into our next budget sessions.
Mrs. Renier?
Well, I like this Town Residents Guide to Town Finances, and I really hope everybody reads it. And I would love to have a like town-wide financial session, maybe at the senior center or something like that, where you can get more input on how we are running things and how things should be run, how well the public is satisfied with the way things are going, because we have to really, really concentrate on the debt. The debt is going to be our big problem in the future, or it's going to be our future. Getting that down is really going to be a tough problem. So the more people involved, the better.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clark?
Nothing additional. I completely agree with what Mr. Manon is looking to do here. I think, I'd like to start seeing the numbers in front of us so that we could actually kind of talk to things specifically. When we talk about debt, knowing like that debt amortization table, like what that looks like year over year for the town, getting into specifics like that, knowing how much we owe on the schools each year. I think that'll help, to Mary Jo's point, like everyone kind of visualize the debt issue a little bit better as town residents. So the sooner we can do that, I think the quicker we can kind of move through these things and these conversations.
We have coming up in the Residents Guide to Town Finances under the Town Manager Report some information that we can share that is exactly what you're talking about, that will blow a few minds when we get to it. So hang in there for a couple minutes on that. Amy, anything?
Yeah, I think we all know, and everyone's been saying too, we've had some really huge capital projects that we voted in the last couple of years, and I think and hope everyone understands that we need to slow down and do fewer projects until we kind of catch up with that debt. But there are also needs that the town has, so it's a tough balancing act. I thought that spreadsheet that Tim O'Leary did a couple of years ago with the forecast in it too was really helpful. You could really visualize, which projects were coming on, and then what it would mean if we did all the projects, and what it would mean if maybe we waited a few more years for some of them. I thought that was really helpful for both the board and the public, and I would love to see that. And then I just want to make sure we're not stepping too much on the toes of the Capital Improvements Committee too, because that's part of their role, and we could all go to their meetings too if we want. 10-year plan.
Okay. A piece of this was also the hiring process for town hall, for town government outside the schools, at least in terms of future agenda items, right? Because I was talking about this through the election cycle and in the first couple of meetings here. I'm a big believer in all levels of responsibility have to have another level of responsibility above it. All levels of hiring have to have another level or 2 or 3 of approval above it, just to maintain and manage costs at the highest level possible. And I think that we should institute not a hiring freeze, because a few people didn't like that term, but a hiring review for the select board for any new town employees going forward. That means not that we get to the meeting and say, are we going to interview this person or not, because they've already made the decision to hire him, but it means way back before that, before we even post the job, we have a conversation to make sure we need that job. We have a conversation with the department head that comes in and says why they need that job. So that we have a couple levels of review. Obviously, the town manager's office would be involved in that too, so that we're not continuing to hire at a time when we can't afford to continue to hire. Again, we're going to get into some numbers here in a few minutes that are going to blow some minds in Hopkinton and make people very, very nervous. We should put measures in place now to control spending like we did in 2009, 2010 to ride out this quote unquote storm of debt service that's coming at us. So I'd like to get that hiring review process in place if the board's inclined to do it. If we're not inclined to do it, let me know and we won't talk about it anymore. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's not saying we won't hire. It's saying we'll hire with some review to make sure that we need to hire, and we can look at it from 30,000 feet instead of the person that's worried about putting stuff in, getting something done on their desk. I get that. But we have to balance that with what the community is facing as a whole. And once you hire somebody, your expenses go up for a long time. And it's just business 101 to have a couple levels of review. And I think we're a little light in that regard in town government.
Through the chair, so to understand that, and completely agree, we need to have more scrutiny given, some of the financial constraints that we see and what we have experienced on the increase of our taxes and debt burdens. I'm trying to kind of visualize and understand. One is that when we do the budget process, and this is part of the discussions we should have, how we can tune our budget process better or institute some of these things. When we do the budget process, we do actually approve any new hire for the year, right? That is accumulated from various departments, school, and everyone. So to clarify, are you suggesting even after that approval, month to month, we would want to review what is out of that now going to be hired? So kind of second layer of scrutiny, is that correct?
Yes. Yep. And if somebody resigns and there's an opening, same thing, we do it then too.
I like the idea. I think it's our bigger battle should be the first part when we plan out the whole year. And then it's always, because things change through the year, so it's always good to, kind of revisit that time to time. And the second piece I want to also add, and that's something I spoke to Kyla, and she's done a great job in projecting some of these, which she's going to share soon, and some of the other policies and principles. One is that we are seeing recently pretty significant increase in our free cash. And we want to assess where the savings kind of came from. Was it because we projected 3 hires and we didn't get to hire them? Then instead of level budgeting at that point on, we want to start thinking about a mechanism. Let's go back and say, okay, if you didn't hire 3 person last year, do you still need them for next year? So instead of kind of allocating the same budget again each year by year, something of that sort, because instead of having that free cash at the end, we want to optimize the allocation up front. So some of the tuning, I think, along those lines, we can revisit.
Yeah, in years past, we talked about zero-based budgeting. It wasn't, you're at 100 grand this year, so you need 102,500 next year because you got 2.5% or whatever it was. That's, no. Why do you need the 100 grand? Go back to that 100 grand, start at 0. You have 3 people, okay, that's 20 grand each, okay, and then you have cars and you have gas, okay, that's up to 80 grand. So wait, you add it up to 85, why do you need 100? Right, so zero-based budgeting starts from 0 and goes up instead of just, we get 2.5, therefore we get 2.5.
Totally, yeah.
So would it be okay with the board if the town manager's office worked on this hiring review process?
I have a lot to say on this topic. I was just waiting for it to be my turn. So, sorry. I really worry about the delays this could cause in the current hiring climate. Like, unemployment is low. It's hard to get people. And if we have to make the town manager come to another meeting and then that delays them in hiring, like municipalities do not pay as much as the private sector, and I don't want to lose good people because we're being too slow. Like, we're not in a recession right now like we were in 2008. And I don't want to stress out our staff. Like, the town clerk has lost the assistant town clerk, and it's at election time, so they're really busy and stressed. And to make them delay another month before they can even post a job opening for a position that is already funded in the budget, that just doesn't make sense to me, and I'm not really comfortable setting that policy right now.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I agree that, losing the assistant town clerk right now when we did has been really difficult. I know I've been volunteering and working in an office all last week, and I'm going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. The paperwork from all of this balloting and getting ready for this election is enormous. And and he's get senior help, and we're doing what we can, but this is a really difficult time.
Through the chair, I fully appreciate, Amy, what you mentioned, and there will be situations like this, and we want to be fully supportive of our administration and staff. But I'm thinking that might make, that kind of demands that we should make this process smooth and easy. So for example, in this case, and I'm not picking on any, just throwing out an idea, that maybe once a month or once every 2 months, from the budget perspective, we get to talk about what are the next hire that we're looking at for the next 2 months and what are the rationale that we already approved. And it should be a quick and easy process unless there is some significant change of some kind, but not to slow down. How can we balance it out is the question. And I don't know the full answer, something to explore, but we definitely don't want to be a bottleneck for supporting the staff and the administration needs. But at the same time, it can serve that tuning purpose in some ways.
Because depending on who and where we hire, it's going to have to go out, be advertised, and people have to be interviewed, and it's a process. And if we're going to make a decision right off the bat before we even do any of that process, that could be difficult.
Well, as soon as we know someone is leaving, we begin working on that process, and with the goal to post that as soon as possible. To that end, what kind of, if that has to then come before the board before that occurs, how can a department prepare? What standards is the board going to apply to filling vacancies?
Something we should figure out, but I think we should start to try and figure that out.
Yeah. And maybe it's less formal of a thing, because I would think if you're referring to a scenario in which, someone leaves, right, and you got to find the backfill, you can kick the tires on, the paper process. I think that's what you're alluding to, right? Like, it takes time to kind of organize and put out a request, set things up. In the worst case scenario, we should be meeting less than 2 weeks from when you find out about that, correct? So, why can't we have that as part of an immediate agenda item where you give your recommendation, and we shouldn't be going back and forth for half an hour about these things. It's you and maybe the department head that's applicable, just come up and say, hey, this is why we think we need to address this right now. We understand the freeze or, the hold, but let's try and move through these things quickly. You know what I mean? I'm talking this should not be done over multiple weeks. It should be minutes of conversation, why you guys think it's important, and then we put it to a vote and move forward. Good. I don't know if that's the perfect solution, but I agree that we should not be wasting time doing these things, but finding a middle ground where we review them quickly and move on for better or worse.
Through the chair, I want to be
moving on to the more detailed review if it's a brand new position that is newly created. When somebody leaves and they need to be filled, I don't want to cause any delay.
So lean manufacturing, lean enterprise thinking, lean warehousing, lean driving, lean whatever, it's business principle 101. If somebody leaves, you review it. Do we need this again? If somebody leaves every 6 weeks, well, you better review it because something's going wrong with that position. So a review, I believe we should run it like a business. I'm a big lean enterprise thinking person in my business world, and it should not stall us. I hear what you're saying about slowing us down, but it should not stall us. I don't believe it stalled us in the past when we did this 10, 15 years ago, because we had folks that just said, okay, we need it. Why do we need it? Okay, done, go. We can do it. I think we could do it. We could have every meeting, every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. Do we have to deal with any HR issues right now? Do we have any openings? Let's have a discussion.
And I think we should delegate this to our professional staff. I think, well, anyway.
That's not that review. So I hear you. I agree. I'm all for delegating to staff.
Manager.
But this is a high-level review. It's board of directors stuff. It happens every day in business. It happens in my business all the time.
It's meant we only meet once a month, so that delays.
Yeah. To the chair, one thing I want to be clear, at least from my end, I'm not proposing any hiring freeze at the moment or any hiring, stoppage, but another layer of kind of check and review time to time. So we, kind of go as need-based. And it's pretty common, actually, in corporate world, that even if I get a budget of $50 million in the beginning, every project I go through or every people I hire, I still have to go through the approval process. Shorter, more assured one, but at least for some visibility to reconcile and say. So something like that, and fully appreciate, Amy, your comment. I would be also very much supportive of making it visible, transparent, fluid, and keeping the authority where it belongs, more of a, review, pulse check, and if needed, then only intervene type of review here. It should be very quick, once every, period, determined period, something of that sort. So I think we talked quite a bit on this. We can process this and come up with some structure or form if we all agree.
Great. Joe?
Yeah,
real quick.
my last point, I understand everyone's concerns. I think we should remember that, as part of this review, it's just a quick conversation, and we should be heavily weighting the opinion of our town manager. We have a ton of confidence in her, so that should be the biggest piece of that. If she's coming up and saying, hey, we need to backfill this role immediately, we all need to weigh that heavily. It's not slowing things down. It's just a level of oversight that's quickly discussed, and that opinion is the bulk of it.
I completely agree, and it does another thing in business that we call accountability. It creates accountability. Elaine advocates, I really need this position. We got to fill this position. Okay, you've got our support. If it doesn't work, guess who's got the problem now? Elaine has that problem. It's called accountability. It's how we do it, right? And that's just how it works in the real world. So I agree. Let's take, Elaine, if we could maybe try and put something together that you'd be comfortable with and bring it back to the board for our next meeting, and we can take a look at that process. Or that concept. I mean, it doesn't have to be some big long thing, but just how the thing would it would play out, and then we go from there. So with that, I think we should move on. Everybody good? Okay. Item number 10, Water and Sewer Advisory Board charge. Elaine.
This is another item board generated to talk about forming a water and sewer advisory board to deal with a number of issues, whether it be joining the MWRA or PFAS, any of the things that we've been dealing with lately, discolored water also in the last few years. We've provided water rates, sewer rates, and the enterprise funds. There is a framework for a committee charge that was in the packet, something to start the discussion and to list the things there that the board, wants to see from an advisory board, because it's going to be advising you on these policy matters and making recommendations.
Thank you. Mr. Muna, did you have a chance to look at that framework? What did you think?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Elaine, and for bringing that up. I think this is very timely and covers much broader spectrum, so I like that. I spoke to Elaine this morning. A couple of things I think we could consider adding or kind of tuning a little bit, but overall the structure great. The overall formulation is great. A couple of things I wanted to emphasize because, as you know, I've been following the PFAS issue and our town has been pretty concerned about it. So kind of we have that as part of the charge, that it'll be also to remediate all contaminants or related issue and ensure clean water. I just wanted to specify a little bit more about the PFAS issue, and I provided some content. So based on that, some incorporation would be helpful. So to kind of show our emphasis on that. Second comment I had was that I also wanted to have this advisory board to collect and formulate kind of I'm thinking like a dashboard or a monitoring tool, sort of, that would demonstrate the commitment for clean water that we have. What it'll do is help us understand if there is any lapses and some actions needed, which I'm sure DPW and everything combined will be doing. But more importantly, what I've noticed is communication to the town residents. And it's kind of funny because, and not so funny, because for the last couple of years, there's been tremendous work going on PFAS remediation from the town perspective. We have done the MWRA design. We have done the agreement with Southborough for the pipeline connection. We have had town actually through us approved 1.5 million and remediate the well number 8. All this good work has been done. But if you remember, even then in the town meeting, there were like a lot of frustrations, and it appeared to be that most of the people didn't know about that. So I think this type of communication could be a part of the charge, that they will be kind of our voice advise us and then be the voice to the town to educate and appraise what's going on.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Ritterbush.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be devil's advocate again here. I really don't want anything that's going to slow down the removal of the PFAS and improving our water system and the connection to the MWRA. And I just am not sure that doing this would not just slow things down. Like, we need to rely on professional staff. Every MMA meeting I go to or MAPC meeting I go to, they talk about professionalizing your town government. And then, you know, we're not going to get professionals in to be on this committee. And so if they're going to be the interface with the public, I sort of understand that. They can reach out to the public, collect information, provide it to our professional staff. But I don't want to slow down our clean water initiatives. So those are my concerns.
Okay. Joe?
Kind of in line with that, the only thing I wanted to see differently was kind of a little bit better description of, and I know it's a really challenging thing to do, but I believe that we do have professionals in this town that could help with this, and like maybe laying out how we can identify that and get them on board, because not to just disagree with you, but I know we have people that can help us with this, that do have a background in this type of stuff, and making sure those people are involved could actually move this stuff more quickly, in my opinion.
Through the chair, I just got a letter today from Sustainable Green Chair recommending one of the members there who is a water filtration expert in his professional life, and he's very interested in this possible position.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there will be more. But.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, that was sort of my thought, getting people to volunteer for these commissions. You know, we're going to be starting like 3 new ones, and we have to get the people out there who are qualified people to volunteer. And from my experience, it's been really difficult to get anybody to volunteer for anything if it's a difficult thing to do, and we've got them. So, I mean, this is, you know, one guy who's in water and stuff, but we can't just have these commissions and put everybody or anybody who comes forward on them. We want to have professional commissions. Yeah. Because they're difficult. The gas plant, you know, we need some kind of experience and some kind of I mean, I think maybe the best thing we could do is put together some kind of group to go to the chamber and to talk to them about what we need. This is what we need for water, sewer. This is what we need for the gas plant. This is what anybody here willing to volunteer, and not just the chamber, but I mean various businesses and things like that, and maybe even the lake group might know some people who are really water conscious, etc. But we just can't have all these committees and advisory boards without the right people.
So that's exactly why I think we need to do this, to your point. Because the 5 of us, with all due respect to the 4 of you, I'll tell you about myself. I know nothing about water and sewer commission issues. I just don't.
Right, me neither.
Right? So we can't do it all. And right now, we are the water and sewer commissioners. When the town had 5,000 residents, we had a DPW board, or whatever they call it at the time. Most towns in Massachusetts, I shouldn't say most, a lot of towns in Massachusetts have elected DPW boards, or water and sewer commission boards, all over the Cape. There's signs up right now for all the water people running for water and sewer commissions. So it's a thing elsewhere, and I don't think we're doing the town a service by not having that expertise on that commission, because it's a really important thing. I guess one point I would challenge, though, is this MWRA connection. With all due respect, I want to slow that down, because that's $40 million, give or take $10 million, depending on who you talk to. That's a lot of money for us to absorb over the next several years when we have everything else that's coming at us. And that's the residents that are going to have to absorb that kind of money, the users, right? So that's a huge impact on our residents. So I want to make sure we get it right. And I'm sitting here today, if I'm the Water and Sewer Commission having to make a decision about whether we go with MWRA or not, I have no idea what to do. I just don't know. These folks, I hope, will be those experts that will know what to do, and they can come in and explain to us and the residents why we should do it or not do it, as the case may be.
And more of an expert than our professional staff. And so often, we have committees that we can't fill seats on. We might just get 3 people that apply, and for 3 people on a board, and we'll just appoint them because they're the only ones that applied. We'll see, but...
Yeah, we'll find that out. That's a fair point. We will find that out one way or the other. But this is a huge industry. There's a lot of people in these areas that live in this community, and I think we could fill it with some good folks. Yeah. But why don't we do this for now, because we're marching down a path here. You provided some input to Elaine this morning, it sounds like, and I had given her some input on a couple of things I thought after I saw the charge, and you've heard some other stuff, Elaine, so maybe we codify it a little bit further, or codify those thoughts, and we can take it to the next step, and we'll present it again, and we'll see how we're doing as we go.
Yeah, I think that sounds good, and let's continue to evolve. But time-wise, we probably want to act sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. I want to set the commission up, and then I'd love the commission to figure it out, the MWRA, and tell us. But I just don't think we can walk out and spend $40 million based on what we know today. For me,
exactly, yeah. We want to do the proper vetting, and that's the capital project principles I was talking about.
Yeah.
And there are, grants and other opportunities that may evolve, which, again, the commission can help us. And one thing just to add, I fully appreciate that it won't be easy to get the experts, but I also fully expect that there would be, some that can come from our community, from our residents. I already have known and got the opportunity to hear from some. But regardless, another aspect of it is that I also was thinking that this board would help us to amplify the voice of the residents on a very focused area. Because as we have been saying, 5 of us, we have many issues that we try to lead and solve and handle. But some of these needs more focus than others and needs more interaction with residents than others. This is one of those issues. So the role is not only for the expertise, but also to be interactive communication and feedback or kind of voice collection from the town residents, in my view. So it would be a balanced kind of board in that way.
Could we get the stats from the state website? Maybe it's on there, about how many towns really do have an elected or appointed water sewer board or DPW board? I thought most towns were getting away from that, but Brian seemed to think that most of them do have it.
I see a lot. I said I pulled most off the table. I said a lot, I think.
I know.
But whatever, I agree with you. It's fair to check that out, but they're out there. Okay, let's table it for now. Good conversation. I think we're walking down the path, and Elaine, if we could take that feedback and we'll put something else together. Item number 11, the Milford-Hopkinton Intermunicipal Agreement Extension. We're a few minutes early here. I think it's okay to proceed with this. I don't think we have anybody coming in. Elaine.
So in 2000, the town signed an agreement with the town of Milford for the town to send sewer to the Milford treatment plant. And that agreement was then renewed again in 2010, and it has expired. And so we have, thanks to Kyla LaPierre, CFO, who reached out to the town of Milford, was able to work with them in having that renewed under the same terms and conditions currently in effect. So it would be a renewal of that agreement. It's important in case we need the additional services. The town has never sent anything to Milford during the time that it's had the agreement. Most of the wastewater, or all of the wastewater, goes to Westboro. But there may be a time, perhaps additional economic development or something that happens where we may need an additional place for the wastewater to go for treatment. And so recommending that we extend this agreement under the same terms and conditions that were in effect in 2010.
Okay, thank you. Kyla, do you want to add anything to that based on your conversations with them? No. All good? Okay. Mrs. Ritterbusch.
Yeah, I just want to confirm the town of Milford has agreed to extend at the same terms. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I understand it's more expensive than the other sewer options, so we avoid using it unless we really.
Correct.
Okay.
What's that? Joe.
No questions.
No, I had some questions when I read the agreement. I mean, it was signed by like Hank Fredette and Maureen Dwinell, and it was a long time ago, and how we were doing, but it doesn't cost us anything. And it's just a safety gap to have it in case we need it. And so far, we haven't needed to go to Milford, but you never know. And I think the MWRA is going to ask us to continue the agreement.
Okay.
No, I think it's a good thing. Thanks to Kyla, thanks to Elaine for doing this. Let's do this.
I was involved in 2010. It was a painful process at that time because there had been some friction between Hopkinton and Milford between 2000 and 2010, and some things that had gone on in South Street over the years. So I'm glad to hear that we've got a much smoother process now, which is great, and I fully support doing it. So for this one, I believe we have a motion.
I'll go. I move to approve the extension of the 2000 intermunicipal agreement as amended in 2010 with the town of Milford relative to wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous and so carries. Thank you. Item number 12 on the agenda, the town manager report, and then we've got several items underneath the town manager report, so we'll have our town manager move through it as quickly as she possibly can.
She will.
She will.
So the first thing on the town manager report is the Resident's Guide to Town Finances that you mentioned earlier. It's in the packet, and it'll be posted on the website shortly, if it's not there already. And so thanks to Kyla and the finance team, they've prepared a basic overview of town finance and laid out where the town's revenues go, where the expenditures are, and the debt. There's a discussion of the debt, and the pay-down schedule is in there for the debt that's currently been voted. So this is great information for the town, for the residents as we enter the budget process, as we get to a town meeting. And of course, it can be updated as things change seasonally as needed. And I think it's a great place to kick off our fall season. And it's a great tool to have. So I urge everyone to get that, and we'll put copies in the lobby, anywhere else we can reach people.
Would you do me a favor, please, and would you read out the numbers that are the tax implications based on the current debt that we have, so that we bring some real focus to what this report can help people understand? Kyla, if you would, please.
Sure. So there's a lot of information here, but if you go to the debt roadmap, it really breaks it down what's going to occur over the next 5 years or so based on what's approved. And I want to make it clear, it's what's approved, because any of the capital planning or proposed capital plan over the next 5 years is not included in here. So this is just what has been approved. So if you look at page 9, it's the pay down schedule, and you're going to notice that in fiscal year 25, we have a debt payment of $7.6 million. 26, it almost doubles, and it continues to go up. And what does that do to taxes? If you go to page 11, our average tax bill right now on the average home is about $12,500. It's going to increase year over year over year. So by FY30, it's going to be $18,500. And that's without any more debt. No capital.
So let me just walk us through that one more time for those at home that aren't studying this stuff like some of us do. If you own a house in Hopkinton and it's valued at $850,000, roughly $850K, you're paying approximately $12,500 in taxes for FY24, 25, no, 25, FY25. So that's the current fiscal year, and we're in right now, that ends next June, okay? Starting in July of next year, going through July or really June 30th of 2030, so that's 5 years, your average tax bill is going from $12,500 to $18,500 in 5 years' time, okay? That's for the average home. A $600,000 home, which there are not that many anymore, is probably going to go from 8,000 or 9,000 to about, I don't know, $14,000, something like that. So maybe a smaller home still going up into the teens. If you have a home that's worth $1.5 million, which a lot of people in Hopkinton have a home worth $1.5 million, you're probably paying somewhere around $20K right now, maybe a little less. You're going up close to $30,000. If you have a home in Hopkinton valued at $2 million, and there's a lot of those, and you know they're expensive too, and the taxes are crazy expensive there, you're going from maybe $30,000 to $45,000. These increases are real and they are massive. And we have to get people to understand that. So when capital improvements comes and says we need X, Y, and Z, and the schools come and say we need P, D, and Q, and the DPW, everybody comes. That's only adding to those numbers. So when residents recognize that their bills are going from $12,500 on average to $18,500, $6,000 in 5 years, and then it stays there for a while, that's going to be really hard for people to swallow.
And it was important for us to put this together and to put this front and center, because when I joined here in March, I don't think the residents understand. I didn't until I started running the numbers. And then in May, in the town meeting, when I heard the continued debt that was approved, I'm nervous. I'm nervous for the town, especially for people on limited incomes. You have to plan for this. So this was important to me.
Well, I think you did a great job putting the report together. I went through it the other day in great detail. I asked about 50 questions. She was exhausted by the end of it, I think. But we had a really good conversation, and this is a real challenge for us. And so when I jump on the soapbox about reviewing every hire, and I jump on the soapbox about rusty cars for our team to drive around in a couple of years, that's why.
No, totally. And thank you for all the work. And we spoke at length. This is exactly, the kind of radar we need for everyone to see what's going on, what's going to happen, what it's going to look like. And on the same note, we did have tremendous growth, and we did have the need for some of the very critical infrastructure development work and investments, and that's why we are here, unfortunately. Now, it's water under the bridge. Could we have done, better 10 years ago, 15 years ago? That's water under the bridge. But what we want to do is, going forward, we want to, of course, at least for the next decade, be super sensitive about how we and what type of capital projects, or should we go in complete freeze, except within certain criteria for urgency or emergency or service level complete degradation, that type of criteria. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, that it's kind of could be done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but we should do it now even more with better scrutiny. That often it's not about our passion, it's not about our pet projects, it's not about what, we all want to do the right thing for the town, great things for the town. We have great visions and passion for the town, but how can we put in a more number-driven and need-driven criteria set and scrutiny for going forward? Two reasons. One is for our and all the board members for the right decision making, and for the town to understand and make the right vote as well. And then the third is to have that collective awareness that where we are, how cautious we should be, so that the tough decisions we may have to make sometimes can be understood in terms of numbers as well. So fully appreciate that, and we'll continue to work on that.
And I also think we owe it to the town to come up with a strategy of how we're going to help solve this problem. So Mary Jo, to your point about, should we start paying down debt? It's in our best interest to help them understand how we're going to make an impact here.
Any comments, Mary Jo?
No, it's going to be, we're in for a rough ride. Let me just say that.
Okay.
You have
Sorry,
to
I
let
just
people
wanted-
know.
Then we'll come back to you. Joe, anything on this particular topic?
No, thank you so much for laying this out like this. It's extremely helpful. I hope the residents all get a look at it, start to understand it better, because this is what they need to look at. Thank you, Kyla.
Amy?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the information and trying to get it out to the public, because that is, the greatest challenge, getting people to pay attention to things. So,
This will get their attention.
the thing is, it probably won't, but anyway, but it's a good effort.
Okay, Elaine, sorry about the distraction there from your agenda, but we wanted to cover that one briefly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyla.
So next is the McFarland Sanger House at 148 Lumber Street. This is a town-owned building from the 1700s on a small parcel of land on Lumber Street. And in 2015, town meeting approved CPC funding for improvements to the building envelope, painting and so forth. So the CPC recently sent a letter to the board inquiring about this because in 2021, town meeting voted to convey or to transfer the property to the select board so that the building and the land possibly can be disposed of, can be sold. So after that occurred, I started working on that project and over a couple of years worked with Mass Historical, who provided a template for historic preservation restriction, drafted that and sent it to the Historical Commission, who has been discussing it and trying to potentially find interested parties who are interested in doing something with this building, whether it's moving it or using it in place. And they explored whether it could have water and sewer, because it doesn't have that, and the lot is small. And the upshot is it does not have access to, can't have a well or a septic system. There's not enough land there. So we can proceed with the disposal process. In the meantime, the abutters are concerned with the appearance of the building and would like to have it painted. CPC is wondering if they should cancel out this project or keep it in place, this funding opportunity, while we look toward the disposal. And so we will be, at some point, finalizing the preservation restriction and issuing an RFP to see if there's a buyer for the building, which probably would be removed.
Okay. Do you need anything from us tonight?
No, just be thinking about, a response to CPC as to whether this funding should be retained for now or could be closed out.
Okay.
And we won't, it's not on the agenda to vote about that, just think about it for now? Or?
Think about it for now, yeah.
So I think that is a good idea to retain the funds for now in case we might need them to improve it a little bit so that somebody might buy it and relocate it to somewhere with water and sewer. But I agree that we should probably go ahead with the, try to sell it to somebody who would like to preserve it, because it's from the 1700s. It's really a nice architectural example. So,
Beautiful building, I love it.
yeah.
Okay, item C.
So as you may know, the extreme heat we had, there were problems with cooling in the library, which caused a couple of building closures as the heat and humidity became very high in there. That building doesn't have operable windows. The only opportunity they have for air is what's coming in the system. There's a geothermal system there, and Dave Del Torrio provided a memo to the board that outlines what's been done to fix the problems that they experienced or they discovered with one of the geothermal wells. You can still see the evidence of the activity there in the parking lot as they finish that up, but it is working much better now since they made that fix.
Okay.
The next item is one that was on your list of future agenda items, understanding the options for appointment of Labor Council and Town Council. So the appointment of obtaining legal services isn't subject to the procurement law, but if the board does want to seek legal services, you'd want to identify what services you want to receive and go through a process of soliciting proposals for review and interviews of attorneys by the board. It would be a process that could take some time.
Do you have a recommendation on that?
Well, I don't really know what the board wants. I mean, in this regard, if you wanted to solicit proposals from attorneys, we could do that. Hasn't really been discussed other than looking at options.
Do you think we need to do that?
I'm pleased with the services we've received from our current Labor Council and Town Council over the years. But it's always good to review options. So I'm just looking for guidance from the board too in that regard, but I am satisfied with the services we've been receiving.
Do you need that guidance tonight, or is this something we can noodle on a little bit? And then maybe
Something you can think about. You have not made the annual appointment of Labor Council and Town Council. And I'm wondering if this is something we do in advance of the next annual appointment. So it's something we start working on in, say, January, February.
So a point for this year, and then maybe do a process to see if there's.
Correct. Because it will take time to solicit proposals, define what we're looking for, and solicit proposals.
So, sorry, when we appoint, is that like a one-year contract?
One-year appointment.
So is there something we can go like 6 months so that you can start the process, just like something to kind of get going without being locked in for a year?
Well, I think the charter says it's an annual appointment.
Okay.
And I missed what you said. Did you say it is subject to procurement law, or it's not? It's not. Okay.
Anything else, Amy, on this one?
Well, I do think if we were going to do this, we definitely need to define what we want from the firm. We have, some of our needs are different than other towns. No other town has a big LNG facility so close to the residents, things like that. Just make sure all our legal needs are covered in whatever we might put out.
Okay. Anybody else on this particular topic right now? Why don't we noodle on this one a little bit? I really like some of the things I saw this evening in terms of preparation and learnings and going forward strategies to improve services for us. So let's just leave it at that for now and see where. But I do think we should have this on your next meeting discussion, and maybe then we can offer some more guidance. Okay. Next item, please.
Next is the special town meeting dates. So there are two potential dates for a special town meeting in the fall. We'll need that special town meeting for MBTA Communities Act. And so November 18th and December 2nd are dates that the town clerk is comfortable with, or more comfortable than others as far as when they can, between elections and so forth and holidays, that they can manage given they're short-staffed. And I put in here the process of how that occurs. It's about a 6 or 7 week lead time. So if the board was going to, for example, have the November 18th date, then you would start that process in October. On October 1st, you would call that special town meeting. That's the earliest that you would do that.
When is Thanksgiving? I don't.
It's the week after.
20-something, November 24th, something like that.
One of the advantages of, well, it depends on your perspective, the advantages of a November date is that you can have financial articles on the warrant, but if it's in December, it would be not possible to set the tax rate then by the end of the year if there's a financial vote in December.
Well, there's your answer.
Just going to say, which part about that was favorable? Which part about that was favorable?
All right, so we're going to table that for now. Is that okay? And you want us to
Just
speak about
information.
November 18th or December 2nd?
I don't have a preference between the two, whatever works better for the town clerk. But the other question, there's a zoning map change, which this would involve, has to have a hearing by the planning board, right? How many weeks ahead does that have to be?
They have to have a hearing within 6 months.
Oh, okay. So it could even be as short as a week or something.
So they'll need to have a hearing, the next month or two.
Okay.
Okay, we good on that topic? Teachers' union negotiations.
Just an update that when the teachers' union negotiations begin later this fall, that town manager is included, will be accompanied by the CFO to provide the financial picture of the community, revenues, expenditures, and forecasting.
Have you confirmed that with the school system or the school superintendent?
Yes.
I think that's an excellent opportunity for us to participate throughout the whole process, not just at the end when it's a rubber stamp, but throughout, right? You mean throughout? That's big.
We've done that before, I think, right? I think Norman used to go.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then, is it already time for another 3-year contract for teachers? Maybe it's just the paraprofessionals. I thought they just settled this year, but they're already starting a 3-year for teachers?
Oh, yeah.
Be in a couple of months that will start.
But they just voted the paraprofessionals this year, but are they on a different cycle?
I don't know the cycle of.
Oh, okay.
Teachers' contract is starting, negotiations starting.
Yeah, the HTA.
Okay, but like where I work, there's the WEA, and there are 5 different units, and we all try to go at the same time for all our negotiations. But it sounds like our schools are doing it differently.
Teachers, for sure, yeah.
But they're usually all under the same umbrella.
All good on this one?
Yep.
Item G, please.
On the Main Street project, all of the 12 transformers have been installed, so that's wonderful. And we've seen a lot of Eversource crews and trucks around doing a lot of work. It's very encouraging. So they're starting the cutover from the overhead to the underground infrastructure this fall, September, October. And there was a walkthrough in August looking at outstanding items, and the brickwork is approved and should be beginning this fall, and landscaping is also planned for the fall. We're still, however, also waiting for Amarillo to arrive with their crews to do additional work.
That's such a huge relief about the transformers. Excellent news.
It's good news.
Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
Next item, please.
No update on the PFAS treatment project. The treatment system's operational. After successful sampling, the board would be approached to remove the bottled water rebate sometime in September.
Does that mean we can drink regular water now out of a faucet?
Yes, for the last.
Everybody? Good.
Everybody.
I don't have to buy used bottles anymore.
All good on this topic? Next item, please.
And then on the MWRA project, nothing is progressing at this point. It's on hold for the moment while you consider the Water and Sewer Advisory Board.
Okay. Everybody good on that topic?
Makes sense, yep.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Lazarus?
No, that's it.
Great. Item number 13. I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
I was just going to notice, so we're already seeing a delay because we have of the board, the idea of setting up the board, that's the thing.
Yeah, so maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, Elaine, because the folks in Southborough sent us a letter, right? Did the board all get that letter?
So, yes, and so Southborough understands why there's a temporary pause, but they're very eager to move forward.
But they also said they're going to sit tight until we figure out what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? So to your point, Amy, yes, it's
Delaying,
it's
yes.
delaying it, right? Okay. So we good? All set? Item number 13, liaison reports. I'll start. I don't have any at this moment.
I'll have some at the next meeting. I got one tomorrow night.
Okay?
I don't have any. One thing I wanted to request, and that's for the next future agenda items perhaps as well, is to invite the Affordable Housing Committee and kind of get and our town engineer to get an update on affordable housing. There's been a lot of thoughtful work and calculations going on, but last we checked, we are actually at the 10% threshold in terms of affordable housing, so which means we're going to fall off pretty soon if we don't catch up, even though the next census is for another 8-9 years. But we need to start planning for that and see if we are tracking. So that would be helpful if we can.
Okay. Put that in as a future too.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Mrs. Ridbush.
Yep. I did meet with the principal planner and the planning board chair about the MBTA Communities Act, which is why we will be holding this special town meeting. And we discussed a lot of things, but the bottom line is that we're going to have them come up before our board, if that's okay, in the next month or so to kind of discuss where they're at with it. And it only failed by about 5 votes, I think, last time, and we really need to get this communicated to the public, what our options are. And, you know, our people watch our meetings perhaps more than the planning board, so it would be helpful to get it all out there, and we can ask our questions, we can help spread the message and, you know, make it a better article for town meeting this year. And then, let's see, and then Commission on Disability had a suggestion. As you guys might remember, that when somebody comes before us for a parade permit or a event permit of some kind. We have a checklist for how to make your event more greener that the Green Committee had put together for us, and the Commission on Disability would like to do a similar sort of checklist about how you can make your events more accessible to residents. So they'll be coming, they'll be asking to come up before the board on that later.
All set?
Yep.
Joe?
The only thing was for our police department and extends to our fire department as well. Just a little bit of credit for all the crews that handled that tragic situation last week at Whitehall. It was really tough, so my condolences go out to that Upton family after that incident. So, but the police and fire handled the situation really well, and never an easy thing for them to do. So,
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that recognition. I misspoke a minute ago because of the role with the corridor project I'm playing. Elaine said it all, but I have been obviously engaged in that quite a bit here recently. Okay, we good with liaison reports and any invites? I guess that's part of that agenda item. I haven't seen anything, but have you seen any invites? Okay. Item number 14, future board agenda items. And let me just kind of check these off here a little bit as we go down and see what's we haven't addressed and what we need to address soon. So the Upper Charles Trails Committee, we still have that open May 23 annual town meeting vote that I think we should at some point try and figure out for trails. Even the marathon folks were mentioning that a little bit this evening, so that's coming up.
And CPC mentioned that too, because they have an outstanding, they'd approved something that the money hasn't been spent.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Consider forming an economic development council. I think that we've kicked that around a little bit, but we haven't gone too far down that path at the moment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, we need to.
So we got to keep that here, and let's try and keep pulling that in. The LNG, another thing that I think is important that we introduced the idea, but unlike the Water and Sewer Commission, we're trying to put that framework together hard right now. I think we got to get to that soon too, because it's.
Yeah. And on that, Elena and I was talking about having kind of a preparation meeting, sort of, with Eversource, and then some of the town experts or stakeholders, if everyone's comfortable with that.
Have you? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying in the past, we've always included the fire department when they come to LNG.
Yeah, in the original document I submitted, there were 8 stakeholders. Fire department was
one of them, yeah.
Was Peter Bowman, or is Peter Bowman aware of that potential committee? Do you know Peter? Have you met him yet? He's the Eversource liaison here in town, and he's the one that worked those transformers with some people.
Right, I spoke to him, and we talked about a follow-up meeting, but we didn't get.
He's great, and I'm sure he'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, he was.
Would that be part of his domain, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, he didn't commit anything, but he was interested.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then the Tax Relief Committee, Mary Jo, you wanted to talk about that?
Well, the Tax Relief Committee, it's an ongoing problem in that they can't fundraise or solicit or anything like that. So they have to absolutely depend on taxpayers when they pay their bill to make a contribution. Or we did have a large company that made a big contribution every single year who has now gone and withdrawn. So they need a source of funding so that they know what they have. I mean, some years they've given out $5,000 to people, and other years they've had to give out $100 because they didn't get the funds in. So as often as we can,
So we should have them come in. Would that help, do you think?
Sue Curie's, sure.
And have her give us a presentation and give us an overview, okay? MBTA community zoning compliance, you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, I think we're on track now because we're counting down to a town meeting, so.
Okay, so we'll leave that kind of here, but leave it off for right now. Is that okay?
Yep.
In terms of another update. Update on the police issue, issues we've had in the past. We've covered that a couple of times now, and I think we're trying to learn from it and get some things documented and changed. So we'll leave that for there. The Water and Sewer Commission we covered, considering instituting limits on town department authority and spending and hiring. We just talked about that earlier this evening. Provide information update on matter concerning release of unredacted documents. Again, talked about that this evening and going to get some more feedback from town council. Understand the options regarding town council and labor council. We just covered that a minute ago. And capital projects review and prioritization.
Yeah, on that note, I've been discussing with the stakeholders, and I'll work with Kaida, Elaine, and the school CFO and others, and Mike Manning and Matt from CPC to work on a couple of things so we can have a more elaborate targeted discussion about our policy tuning, our principles framework, and capital projects evaluation criteria and process, which somewhat is there, but we want to be more consistent given the foreseeable financial challenges that we see. So if we can schedule something maybe in a couple of months, that'll be good. I think we'll be prepared to, and Kaila and we all can prepare to present something.
It certainly makes sense as we get into the budget process to have that discussion at that time, maybe. So an October meeting, perhaps, Elaine? That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
We're
before
gonna
the
be
budget.
talking about the debt, too.
Yeah.
The capital improvements has got to be,
I added another one
board.
from earlier, the comment earlier about the Affordable Housing Committee to come in and have a discussion with us about their situation and challenges and what they see coming at us. We kicked around trails. I know one thing that I saw previously with the previous board that, obviously drew some attention for various reasons was the chief of police review at the time. I think it was left with there would be a 6-month discussion going forward. So that was back in April, I think it was. So that's an October discussion. Does everybody think that that would be a reasonable thing to do at some point? Just have the chief come in and just give us an update on the things that's gone on.
Sure.
Is that okay? All right, so we'll add that one, Elaine, to the upcoming future agenda items.
Sorry, Brian, I forgot, I did have some invites, if I could go back to that.
Yeah.
So the Porch Fest is coming up on September 7th in Hopkinton. They haven't released the map yet, but like last year, the fire department hosted, the police department hosted a band, and other neighborhoods downtown and Lake Mass. Family Day is September 4th.
Be one in front of Town Hall.
Oh, there'll be one in front of Town Hall this year. That's great.
Did you say the 7th?
The 7th, yeah.
So like the same day as Poly Arts and...
I think it might be timed according to that, because you could walk around and
Yes.
see the things, yeah. And they have a rain date, but I've forgotten which it is. And then Family Day is September 14th. And South Asian Circle of Hopkinton has announced the Diwali Gala for November 16th. And I've gotten lots of emails about the Board of Appeals public hearing for tomorrow night, so I'll just mention that. It's in our agenda, the hearing notice.
Oh, there were emails about that? I'm joking.
But anyway, people can watch it on Zoom, right? And
Yes.
it'll be recorded. Okay.
And participate and make comments.
What's that?
They're able to comment, too. So it's public hearing.
Okay, anything else? With that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move the motion to adjourn.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.